Welcome, everyone, to Public Relations number 2. Let's talk about some timelines and terminology, and let's dig right into it. And this is number 2 out of these 10 short videos on PR. And so if we go on through the timeline, here's what people need to understand. And by the way, print media is not dead. Magazines, and by the way, magazines also show up as digital magazines. As a matter of fact, nearly half the readers of magazines are reading digital versions. So 4 to 6 months timeline. So you're saying, man, it's September. I want to get something in the October magazine, hiking magazine. You're going to be a little bit late, 4 to 6 months. So this is with traditional magazine, which is also digital versions. So you might start and by the way, at the beginning of each year, every magazine does an editorial calendar of saying, here's the kind of stories we're going to run with during the year. You need to look at that. And let's say that you send them a story or you send them a story idea and they jump on it. So they accept it in August. They say, yeah, we're going to run that story that you wrote or that you sent us, or we're sending a photographer out to see you or a writer. So in August, they accept the story. In September, it will be proofed, edited, fact-checked, re-edited photography. And this is all on what happens at the publication, not what you do. And so that's what they're doing. And then October, they lay out the publication, they edit it, they proof it, they print it. And then in November, it comes out, it's distributed, but that's the December issue. So even though we had August, September, October, November, the December issue, we had to be there in June or July to even get it started. So one thing you need to understand is that being in traditional media, and there's all these niche publications for quilters, for motorcyclists, for dog owners. There's tons of publications out there, and niche publications are where it's at. But just understand that even if they're a monthly magazine, it's going to take 4 to 6 months before your article physically comes out. And you might start that process in January or even in December when they do their editorial calendar to plant the seed. But when it comes to digital timeline, 2 to 24 hours, 2 hours. And sometimes that's almost too long. With that, emergency situations. Oh, we got weather, just like I was talking about, COVID. Here's things, when we get hit with the next pandemic or security, or we had some criminal activity that's making the news, you got to be on top of it. You got to be right there to respond. Gas prices, road construction shutdowns this week. Those are things that will be on the news that people will print because they're timely and they're useful information. And so when it comes to digital or even news, it's instant. Everyone wants to be the first with the story or breaking news out of this town. So digital is totally different than traditional media outlets. I'll never forget when Michael Jackson died. I got calls from media outlets everywhere because we were about tourism, and they said, Roger, what would people want? Would they want to go to Gary, Indiana, where Michael Jackson was born? Or would more people be interested in going to Neverland Ranch, if it was ever open to the public, which, by the way, it isn't. And of course, what I said is, well, people will more likely go to Neverland Ranch because that's where they knew Michael Jackson as an adult, as the famous singer, all of those things. And the example I used was Elvis Presley, who was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. And in Tupelo, Mississippi, they get about 80,000 visitors a year at his birthplace. So that's nothing to sneeze at. That's good for Tupelo. But Graceland gets 600,000 visitors a year. See, so this was PR about, well, how do you address that situation, and that's where it came in. And so you have to be right on top of it. And by the way, that happened the day he was announced that Michael Jackson passed away. And so I had to be right on the spot to be able to answer those questions. And that's what I related it to. And it worked, got lots of publicity, and by the way, Graceland, I haven't even been to Graceland, but it's on my bucket list. Someday I got to go see that place. Pretty amazing. So bottom line, PR is a 24-hour business. You know what? It needs to be managed, facilitated, and orchestrated. And it must always be integrated with all your marketing. I'm just going to keep hammering on that. It's a single point of contact or office is so important. So it could be a city's public information officer. I always like it if it's a tourism organization, a single person, because if you have one over here and one over here, we might get our signals crossed and everything. And so I always think that having a single person that represents the whole community, tourism, downtown, economic development, the city itself would be fantastic, just so you keep that clear. And by the way, this is pretty much a 24-hour job. I mean, you got to be on call. So when those things happen, you're right there. So let me talk about some terminology for a couple of minutes here. You'll always hear about news media or press rooms. I like press room, media center. Every one of your websites should have a media center or a press room. They're the same thing. It's just terminology. A findable location where the press can get information about you. And I'm going to show you more, and we're going to have a whole workshop just on developing a press room. So that's one of these. And so like here, this is Visit Squamish, British Columbia. They have such a fantastic website. I show them a lot because it's extremely visual. And by the way, your press room is usually at the very bottom. And I think people in the news media know that they're going to go down here. They're going to do it. And there it is right there, media resources in their cases. You click on it and it takes you to the media site, and they've got media coverage. They'll tell you what stories are right there. You can inquire and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so with such a magazine or a blog or a vlog, and I want information. So you can request it right there. You can get video libraries, photo libraries and everything. And these are high resolution. And so there's the photographs that you can get and use. And it'll tell you whether there's photo credits and those things, B-roll footage, if it's going to be on the web or it's going to be on the news or something. They may say, well, we just need some video clips of you. It's right there. And so that's really a great way. And they can even see, well, what articles have already been written, because we always remember media wants to be the first with the story. And so now here's Asheville, North Carolina, another great one. So Squamish is a smaller community, but by the way, it doesn't matter the size. Anybody can do this. Once again, you scroll down to the bottom of their homepage, and when you get down there, you're going to see right there, and the media knows this, for media, there's the press room. And in their press room, they've got, Explore Asheville News. They've got it all right there. More press releases are right there, and you could use those. They even tell you when they were produced, when they were released. Then there's the press kit. There's fact sheets, story ideas, events calendar. These are all the different things that you can have on your website. And it doesn't matter whether you have a Wix website or a WordPress website. It's easy to add these things. And they're all downloadable as PDFs. So if you make it easy for the press and influencers to get information about you, you're more likely to get the coverage. And that is really, really important. And so then there's digital assets. That's your logo and graphics. Squamish even has their Squamish logo on their website that you can use for news stories or other uses promoting the community. Infographics would be how you've seen increases in retail sales or decreases, or what COVID did to you. B-roll, all of these things are digital assets, and they're available in your press room on your website. Fact sheet, that's the nuts and bolts information about your organization or your destination. Statistics, here's our population. It could be, fact sheet could be weather by time of year. And then you could also do another one, a fact sheet. You could also do another sheet that are story ideas. These are great ideas about why you should visit Asheville in October or November. And they'll give you great story ideas. Or if you're a food writer, they'll tell you about why Asheville is such a foodie destination, and so those are the kinds of things you can add. And so here you go, fact sheet, story ideas, wellness. You can see all the different story ideas there. And those are all right there for people to grab and use. And it's only in the press room. And then pitch is when the PR person is pitching a story to a media outlet or an influencer. And then storylines are theme content around events, whether it's a 4th of July event in the US or Christmas or anything, already developed things. Storylines, or we've got pitches like you just saw in Asheville, where they've got food news, music news, beer city. Those are all story ideas that you can pitch out there. And those are the storylines. Press kit. And this is a PDF now. It used to be people would mail a physical press kit. You'd have a peachy, if you remember what those are, that you would open up and have all these fact sheets and everything in there. Now what we do is you can still create a press kit, but it contains pretty much what you saw in Asheville, and in Sedona. They did a really fantastic one, and it is a PDF, and it's got all those things in one document rather than a bunch of different documents. Press news releases, 1 to 2 page document written like a news story. And by the way, when you get your handout for this, you can see, it tells you how to develop a news release or a press release, how it has to end and contact. And boilerplate is a paragraph at the end that just says about our community or about our organization. That would always be there. But then your headline, your story would be the actual release. I hope that makes sense. Public service announcements are what you hear on the radio, most likely. They're 15 to 30 seconds. You got to write them so that they last only 15 to 30 seconds because they will physically read them. And so that's where you do those. Those are PSAs or public service announcements. Generally used for radio, sometimes television, but mainly for public events or happenings, like we have road construction or we had a washout and our main highway, you can't get in. Those are where you use PSAs. Okay. And then earned media. We talked a little about it, but this is an article, this is in Burlington. I think this is Burlington, North Carolina. And they got like a 1, 2, 3, 4 page article, 5-page article about Burlington and this great road trip destination. You know what it would cost if they had to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full pages of ads? Let's say that in this publication, I can't remember who this is. Travel and Leisure Magazine. So if they did this, 5 full pages might be $10,000 a page. I mean, that might be a good deal for a full page ad. So this earned media was $50,000 that you didn't have to pay for. That is the value of that is what earned media is. If I had to buy all those pages, what would it cost me? And yet we got it just spending some time. As a PR professional, we got a 5-page article about us. And by the way, niche publications are looking for places for their biking audience, or they're looking for places. If you're an RV destination, there's RV magazines, and they'll write multiple pages about you because you're a great RV destination. That's where niche markets really come into PR. I love what Diane Norton said. My friend who's the director of Idaho State Tourism said, earned media is the big megaphone for us. So that's those articles. It's just amazing. And then owned media, there's earned media, which is somebody else putting it out there for you, that third party. But owned media are the channels you own, your YouTube channel, your Instagram channel, your website, all of those things. That's owned media. And of course, it's believable, but not as much as a third party endorsement. And so branded sponsored content, once again, it's a step above advertising. But sponsored content means that you paid to have your editorial, your article there. So you could write an article, they put it in the magazine, they'll say it's sponsored content. People are starting to understand sponsored content means it's basically an ad or advertorial. Looks like an article, but you paid to have it there. Okay, so it's a step up because it's still an article. It's educational. It's not just a pitch, a sales pitch, like you would do in an advertisement. And so that's what that terminology is. And so you can see here where each of these people actually bought, half of a page, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them there on those 2 pages. That's sponsored content. It's more readable than an advertisement because it looks like it's information, and it is information. And then there's freelance. There's freelance authors. They're out there everywhere. There's contributing writers, which means you might have a publication that I don't work for full time, but I do contribute articles. I used to do that for luggage. I'd write articles about luggage and as a freelancer or as a contributing writer. First rights are where you're saying, hey, we've got a story for you. And they say, well, we want to have first rights to that. So we don't want to be putting an article in our magazine that is already going to be in 6 other magazines. So sometimes we'll say, we'll give you the first rights to that because we really want to be in your publication, which means we're not going to let anybody else have that story until you've had it. And then ownership, to use their works. So we're giving you ownership of this. If we write an article and they want to place it in there, we're saying, go for it. You can edit it. You can make it your own, but we're giving you ownership. We're not going to charge you with plagiarism because you're helping promote us. Okay. And then credits are what you do when somebody, can you give me a credit line? And I showed this picture here of near Canmore, and Ronnie Chua took this photograph. And so with photography, always give them a credit line, add their name there. And that way you don't have to pay as much for their photography because you're helping promote them. In online, you could even make their name a link, and you could have a page all about that photographer. That's an amazing photo, by the way. And so that's credits, and give us credit, and that's really important. And that takes care of our timelines and our terminology for PR. I cannot tell you how important it is that your PR person is a good writer. They're a good spokesperson. They're right on top of things. It is really incredible. So now you know a little bit about this. And next up is Public Relations 3, how to develop your PR program, how to actually set up a program. And I'm going to give you the step-by-step guide to that next.